All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So welcome to another edition of In the News. I do have to say I appreciate you guys for being patient as I took my mini hiatus. It was not planned, by the way. I don't like taking more than 1 week between videos, but you know, life sometimes just drops things in your lap or on your desk, and then it's kind of like, boom, you got to dedicate all of your time to taking care of whatever that is. And so I was living my best life, you know, just trying to be great, minding my business, and then life was like, guess what? Surprise! This is what you're going to be working on for the next 17 days. Enjoy! I'm like, yay, I'm so excited, great. And so I had to take some time to knock out everything that came in my pathway. I was like, dang, man. And then, in the midst of all of that, for some reason, like my tonsils randomly swelled up, and that happens to me maybe every 3 or 4 years. For some reason, my tonsils just swelled up, and this time it was like a lot more uncomfortable. And at first I was nervous because I thought I had like COVID or something. So I was like, oh Lord, I was over here retracing my steps and everything, and I kept checking to see if my taste was still there. And so I was good though. It was just my tonsils, but I don't like taking medicine. Like I don't really take a lot of aspirin or stuff like that unless I have to. It's rare that I take medicine, and so this time I was like, F all that. Let me what pills at? I need something. And so I took like 2 Advil PMs, and I have never taken those before. And so, yeah, them things had me high as a kite. Maybe because I didn't really eat a lot of food, and so I mean the whole room was just spinning. I was just laying there, just man. I was okay. What day is it again? I said I ain't taking that no more. Never again. That was giving me flashbacks to being in college and having those wild drunken nights, and you did all kind of shots and partied hard, and it's 6 a.m. and you forgot that you got a paper you got to turn in at 8. And now you're up for 2 hours trying to piece together a paper and your head's throbbing. Said, I ain't going through this no more. Absolutely not. Like, man, so I'm kind of out of the loop on a lot of stuff. I had to play catch up. Like, I'm still on the same episode of Lovecraft Country I told y'all about in the last video from, 2 weeks ago? I haven't heard Trey Songz's new album. I haven't seen the Chicago 7. Like, man. But anyway, it's okay. We're here. So, for those in DC, and really you don't even have to just be in DC for this, on Netflix there is I want to say it's a documentary, but it seems more like a film to me. But it's called Residue. I literally just watched it this morning. My projects are done now. I have a little bit of time to watch TV again. It's called Residue, and it's actually a very interesting watch. It's about gentrification, and it's about an individual who is a native, resident of DC. He moves to California because he has, a passion for film and the arts and everything like that. And 15 years later, he comes back to DC. But of course, he doesn't recognize DC because it's been gentrified. All of his childhood friends have all been moved or pushed into Maryland or pushed into parts of Virginia. And it's a very interesting watch because it really just showcases the conversation of gentrification through the people who actually live it. I think a lot of times, sometimes during the conversations around gentrification, you normally hear, the verbiage coming from people who are speaking on behalf of those who have pretty much been, disenfranchised, or who sometimes the society tries to deem as voiceless. Or you hear the other perspective of the people who have moved in and took over everything. It's like, oh, it's such a great neighborhood now. It's so amazing because if you would have saw what it used to look like, now we have everything over here. We even have fields for the kittens to play in, crap like that. And so, this was an interesting watch because it's through their perspective. And I think there's an emotional aspect that also comes with it where you really get to understand the humane aspect of it all. The feelings that come with just, walking down the sidewalk and you don't recognize anything, or you don't recognize anybody, or somebody that, that you still recognize that is there. Maybe they're not well anymore. And then the conversation of policing, and it's an interesting watch. It's kind of abstract art, but it's a very interesting watch. So if you get a chance, check that out. It's called Residue. It's on Netflix. Also, thank you to everybody who gave submissions for the shout-out series. It's crazy because normally when I put the ad out saying, hey guys, I'm doing a shout-out series, send your submissions, I normally get like 10, 11, 12, maybe 15. Y'all sent so many. I was like, I lost count, but I was like, man, it's going to definitely have to be about 3 or 4 episodes because there were that many people that submitted. I love it though. I'm so glad that everybody is, doing what it is that makes them feel great, that gives them purpose. It's something they believe in. I support it all. So the first episode comes out this weekend. If you're not featured in the first episode, please don't take it to heart. You'll probably be in the next one or the one after that. I tried to literally just go in order of how they came into my email. So that's literally the order I'm going into. And so again, I'm going to feature every single person who submitted. If you responded on the community page, I got you from there. If you send an email to Calvin B. Michaels, even though I did not get a chance to respond to you, I did get it. I even checked my spam inbox just to make sure nothing was in there. So I got everybody. I got all of y'all. I appreciate it. But I do want to say, because one of these submissions is a little bit more timely than the others, for those of you who need something to do on Halloween that's safe and indoors, You may recognize Dana Monet. She's one of the subscribers to this channel. She's been shouted out before. Long-time subscriber, but she's actually participating in a live virtual concert. It's her and a saxophonist. And she also has a live band and everything. And so I will have the link in the description. And as you can see, there's the flyer on the side. Definitely check out and support her. She's always been very supportive to my project, so do the same for her. And yeah, of course, she said saxophonist. I was like, oh, I'm down. You know, I rock with a saxophone. If you have my music, you know, there's a saxophone on probably all the up-tempos. And so, you know, kudos to her. Also, another subscriber, Chris V, you know, he came out with another project entitled The Other Side Part 1. My favorite song from it so far is No Such Things. And so I'll talk about his project in one of the shout-out series, but I just want to give that out there. Anyway, so let's talk about this Supreme Court. So as we know at this point, Amy has been pushed through, and now the Supreme Court stands at what you would say is 6-3 when it comes to the viewpoints and ideologies of the justices that are there. You have 6 that lean to the right, 3 that lean to the left. Now, I said this before in a live video, but if it were up to me, well, not even up to me, I just personally feel that in the United States, something like the Supreme Court should always at least stay balanced. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I lean a lot to the left on everything, and so I would love for there to be a left-leaning 6-3 Supreme Court, but in all reality and in all fairness, you know, I just always thought that the Supreme Court should always stay balanced, where, you know, you have 3 on the left, you have 3 on the right, you have 3 that stay to the center. That way, everybody in the United States always feels that, okay, their viewpoints can at least be heard. If you're somebody that's leaning to the left on pretty much all the issues, and you go, to, you know, before a Supreme Court that's 6-3 to the right, you already feel like you're going to lose the case before you even get in the room. And vice versa if it's the other way around. And so it's kind of funny because when we were kids, the United States, when it comes to the education that we all received, you know, they pushed this whole America has this perfect system of checks and balances, and, you know, the legislative branch and the judicial branch and, you know, the executive branch, they all check and balance each other, and everybody feels represented, and the people get to vote, and everything is all aligned and perfect. And, you know, you watch Schoolhouse Rocks, and I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And, you know, all of that, and then you become an adult, and you're like, wait a minute, something ain't right here. Like, this is not what I saw in Schoolhouse Rocks. And so, you know, literally, you just see so many flaws in the system right now. And so, backtracking, the craziest aspect in all of this is that, okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic, right? And so the economy has gone to S-word, you know. Millions have lost jobs. People, some of these, you know, ordinances that were put in play to make sure that people could not be evicted or foreclosed on during all of this, some of that has already passed on, and now people are getting put out in the streets. Businesses have gone under. And so, you know, there was a stimulus package that was put out initially, and some people got $1,200, and, you know, there was a larger check that went out to large corporations. So Wall Street got bailed out, the airline industry got bailed out, just for them to go and give bonuses to their employees. And so, you know, the same airlines that got this big airline, you know, bonus and bailout, they ended up laying off half their employees because they still couldn't pay them all. And some of that does come from the fact that people are flying a lot less. But again, when you talk about the money that was allocated to them, they decided, let's pay off our execs. And okay, you can take a vacation to Bermuda. And, you know, so they did all that crap. You know what I mean? And you saw a lot of corporations get really big, giant, you know, lots of assistance. And you saw a lot of very wealthy people get more wealth. And you saw corporations become even larger. And there's some companies that are actually doing better now in 2020 than they were doing in 2019. But the people have suffered. The people have been second priority, not even second priority, more like 8th priority, and like, dang, man, here, take this, so y'all shut up already. You know, it's kind of like that episode of That's So Raven when she's the substitute teacher and the kids wanted a snack, and so she took that one cookie and crumpled it up and was like, you know, and then she gave all the kids like one little piece of a crumb, you know, this is all you'll be getting, so make it last. Like, that's literally what folks got. So some people got $1,200, and then there was never another conversation about stimulus checks again because the House and the Senate could not agree on anything. And when I look at somebody like a Mitch McConnell, who pretty much was just like, yeah, we're done. The Senator's not going into, you know, session for any of this. It's done. We'll wait till after the election. We are not doing it. No. That's not what the American people want. We're not doing it, right? Then out of nowhere, RBG dies, and the next, literally the same, we have got to get in the session. We are going to do this because this is what the American people want. The democracy is under attack. I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And so you literally watch the Senate, who sat, because mind you, there's been a whole bunch of bills that have been just kind of sitting there in regards to stimulus packages and additional assistance, the HEROES Act, all that stuff. And so you've seen all those bills sitting there, but of course, in order for anything to pass, you know, House does what they do. It goes to the Senate. And then it goes to the president. He signs it and it becomes whatever it is. And so, of course, when you have a House and a Senate that are in two parties and have two different ideologies, they're going to fight and clash on anything. So you already know they're not going to get nothing done because they can't agree on anything. And so there's that. And then even if, something is agreed upon, if the president doesn't like it, he can veto it. And if it's got Nancy's name on it, he ain't signing it. So, it's all kind of crazy things going on. But like literally, you literally watch them not even make an effort to help the American people when it came to stimulus. It's like people have been struggling. People are, literally dying in the street, homeless, hungry, no job. Some people have missed their rent for the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. People haven't been able to pay their utilities, so on and so forth. And it's just interesting to see that, all of that was like, well, too bad, you figure it out, but we got to get the Supreme Court justice in. And some people are saying, well, what's the rush? Why do we have to rush to get in a ninth Supreme Court justice? Because, it's already leaning 5-3 to the right anyway. What's the big, hoopla? And I think people started to realize this may be more about the election. Mainly because, let's just say Joe does win next week. Having a contested election and then you have a 6-3 Supreme Court that kind of, and mind you, you've appointed 3 of the justices, it kind of, it leans in your favor. Who knows what can happen. And so that's literally what you're seeing. But I want people to also understand that this is just not a luck of the draw. This has kind of been something that's been in the making for at least 40, 50 years. This has kind of been the long-term goal for something like the GOP. They have wanted that Supreme Court for the longest. And it's interesting, and some people may say, oh, no, it's just the way things are. I'm like, no, you have to go back and take into account, like, everything from, like, the policies that have been put out there when you talk about gerrymandering with the districts and everything, the voter suppression and everything like that. There's certain things that have been done to make sure that some people stay in power, that they can never really get out of office. This is one of the reasons why I also support term limits as well, because some people have just been in there too long and they need to go. Their viewpoints and their beliefs and ideologies don't align with the people. They align with their pockets. They align with what it is that they want. And so the people, unfortunately, are collateral each and every time. But getting to somebody like an Amy, what I found so interesting, it's just like they just went and found anybody to put up there. You know what I mean? Like a place like DC alone is lawyer town. Like, for anybody who studies law, a lot of times the students who go to law school at, Howard or Georgetown or wherever they go, a lot of times once they finish, they leave DC because DC is so oversaturated with lawyers and people that just work in the whole, court circuit, all of that. It's just, this is like lawyer, judge, lobbyist town, politic town all day. All kind of qualified people, but a lot of college students leave this area and they go to the Midwest to get their start. And they build up, and then maybe they move back this way, or they go to a Chicago or New York or LA, wherever they, can practice, and they go from there once they're a lot more established. But like, there were so many people who could have been qualified, and I understand the president is going to put the people in who he wants. But it's like, when you look at the qualifications, I had to look at this for myself, because I was like, well, let me see, what's happening with this lady. And so when it comes to her qualifications, it's like, okay, let me see. So she has 2 years in private practice. She's never tried a case. She's never argued an appeal. She's never argued before the Supreme Court. Most of her private work involves civil cases and not criminal cases. She has 15 years of teaching experience, and she's never served as a judge until 3 years ago. And I was like, you know what? That means I'm almost qualified to be on the Supreme Court, because I'm just looking at my life right now. Okay, I'm about 12 years in with youth development, 10 years at my center, plus another 2 years. So I just need 3 more years there. I guess I need to go to law school, do about 2 years of some litigation, and I'm in too. I'm qualified, because literally that's the credentials. I was like, that's all it took. It's like they just put anybody up there. I think that's the insulting part about a lot of this, especially with a lot of the cabinet picks. Like, it's just like they just put anybody in any position, whoever can get a favor done. So like Betsy being over education, I'm never letting that crap go. Like, you've watched poor kids. I'm grateful that I'm not a child and that I'm not in K through 12 right now, because the foolery that I have to witness and see every day. You know what I mean? You got Ben over HUD, and you trying to strip that away every week. It's just like, y'all just put anybody. And it's also a conversation about white privilege. Folks can get as mad as they want, but in reality, this is the prime example where in the United States, there is a system that screws over some, but will elevate others to some of the highest positions of authority just because they exist. Because when you look at somebody like Amy and you look at her track record, she has a little bit of experience, but not some top-notch level experience that should put her on the highest court in the United States. Literally, just think about that. She just became a judge 3 years ago, and all of a sudden, she is qualified to sit on the highest court in the land. You have people who have been in this field for 20, 30, 40 years who will never even get that kind of opportunity based on who they are, where they come from, and how they look. But then you have somebody like her who really, bare minimum, I don't know if you saw this clip. It's a total side note, but it kind of fits perfectly. There's this clip that came out of the UK. There was some kind of game show where the people were like guessing the songs. Like you played a song and they had to guess, kind of like Beat Shazam. And there's like this black woman and there's this white woman. And like the black woman, literally the song would play and she'd guess it right then and there, guess it right then and there, guess it right then and there on each and every round. And like, so she literally carried her team because her partner was like this white girl. And so the two of them are right there. White woman didn't really do anything. Black woman then answered all the questions. This one, like cleaned house on the game. Prime example where somebody rides the coattails of somebody else's work and they get the benefit. The benefit is that they both get the prize money. And this is not to attack the woman playing the game show, but it's a prime example. Like, it's so symbolic where, again, somebody who has no qualifications ends up on the Supreme Court. And I don't even think she knew she was in the running. I just feel like somebody called her one day and was like, hey, you want to be on the Supreme Court? And I can just see her sitting at the living room with all her kids because, you know, she got like 7 kids. Hey, guys, that's kind of cool. What do you think? You think I should do the Supreme Court? Yeah, Mom, that's awesome. I think so, too. High five. And boom, now you're on the Supreme Court. And what's scary is when you just look at like the viewpoints, like what threw me off the most was when I saw her say the bit about race and how, one, there was a whole discrimination lawsuit, or not discrimination, but like hostile work environment lawsuit where, you know, there was an employee that complained they were called the N-word at work and she felt that wasn't sufficient enough to make a claim. But the other part that got me is when she talked about her children. You know, she has 2 adoptive children. I believe they're from Haiti. And she had said that they were not even introduced to race until George Floyd. Now, mind you, these kids are a little bit older. They're much older than like 5 or 6. They're probably like 8, 9, 10 years old. And so I'm like, so you mean to tell me you got these black kids that you've adopted and the first introduction into who they are is death? Okay. All right. And so it just makes you question, and you have to really think about, you know, the issues that are on the table in the near future. Of course, there's the Affordable Care Act. That's on the table. You have Roe v. Wade. They've been meaning to snatch that up for the longest. And the interesting thing with Roe v. Wade, and, you know, you can have your viewpoints on where you stand when it comes to something like abortion, but I just want people to know that a lot of these politicians who really push to get rid of abortion, a lot of these people already have people in their circles who've already went and had one. Whether it's their wife, whether it's their daughters, whether it's them, whether it's their mistress, and a lot of times it's just some under the table type stuff. Like, let's just say Roe v. Wade is overturned and abortion is outlawed. Just know, these same people who fought to get rid of it, in the event that they need one, they got the money to have a doctor come to their house and perform it. Like, that's the other conversation. There's a hypocrisy and all that. But yeah, Roe v. Wade is on the table. Affirmative action is on the table. Even when it comes to fair housing, that's on the table. Job discrimination, that's on the table. Workplace discrimination in the realms of whether people can be fired or not for being gay, that's on the table, of course. Regulation when it comes to Wall Street, that's on the table. When you're just talking about a bunch of different things, there's so much that is like literally right there that can literally redraw and reshape this landscape of how America operates. And so I think that's why, you know, these are very important conversations. You know, there's been conversations about, okay, are they going to, you know, stack the Supreme Court? I'm sure they are. Like, there's no way you're about to sit here and let this kind of foolery take place. But again, it's just like I said, I just think things have to be balanced. But watching somebody like an Amy just get to jump up in there, I was like, wow. You know, this means I think I'm qualified to coach the Seahawks now. I'm still boycotting the NFL, but you know what? I think I'm qualified to coach the Seahawks because you know what? I played football in 8th grade and 9th grade, and I was a corner and a safety. And in 8th grade, we were undefeated. So I think I'm qualified. I'm going to show this picture on the side, and I don't want y'all to start laughing. True story. I was so pissed this day. This was 8th grade, and we were doing picture day. And they ran out of pads, the shoulder pads and everything, because the team was so big, they didn't have enough for everybody at the time. And so they only had one pair of pads or shoulder pads left for the picture, and they gave me these big old giant pads that were bigger than me. So look how I look in this. This is a picture I absolutely hate. You can see the disgust in my face. I was so pissed off this day. You know my daddy chewed me out when I got home. What? Why you let them have you looking like this? And I was like, Dad, those are the only ones they have. You couldn't borrow somebody else's? Everybody was trying to take the picture, so I didn't know what I was supposed to do. Yeah, that's life. Anyway, moving on. And don't be laughing at my picture. I'm serious. I don't want to hear about it in the comments section. And then there's Jared Kushner. And you know, I've been meaning to drag him for a good minute now, so I'm glad he decided to open his mouth. So, let's go to the clip, and then we'll talk.
Thing we've seen in a lot of the black community, which is mostly Democrat, is that President Trump's policies are the policies that can help people break out of the problems that they're complaining about, but he can't want them to be successful more than they want to be successful. And what you're seeing throughout the country now is a groundswell of support in the black community because they're realizing that all the different bad things that the media and the Democrats have said about President Trump are not true.
You see, this is the result of somebody who absolutely knows nothing. But because they're white and they're privileged and they're wealthy, they feel that they have the insight to give their 2 cents and give their viewpoints because they know what the problem is for them 40 plus million black folks. They just don't want it enough. They have to want it for themselves. Nobody can fight for them more than they can fight for themselves. They have to want it. They're just not fighting hard enough. They don't want it enough. They're lazy. And this is coming from somebody who's never had to work for anything. Grew up rich, you know what I mean? Did not even have the credentials to get into Harvard. However, because the parents donated $2.5 million to the university over the span of a few years, he was able to jump right into Harvard and get into whatever positions he would get into later in life. He's never had to work for anything. And also, this is an example of somebody who recognizes and does not understand anything when it comes to American history. And that's the American education system doing what it's supposed to do, keeping people ignorant to the reality of what is when it comes to black oppression in the United States. That's a conversation that is constantly left out on purpose because it makes white people feel good about their experience, and it also gives the whole narrative that they worked hard for everything that they have. A great reference video that I've done before that pretty much covers why we have the wealth gap and why things are the way they are. It's my Steve Harvey video where it's called like Steve Harvey, no, that's not how this works. It's like a 50-minute video where we literally go through the entire setup of America and the conversation of wealth in regards to races and how some groups were left out and how some groups got everything, and also how white people pretty much who do have a little bit of whatever they have it because of handouts, i.e. the GI Bill, FHA loans, the New Deal, all of those things that people don't want to consider to be handouts, but they were. And so you saw a lot of generational wealth be built just on that alone. So that's a good video to watch. I'm not going to talk about all of those subjects as, in depth on this video because that's what that video was for. But again, somebody who, again, just does not really know what they're talking about. So let's just dive in for a quick second. One thing I will say is this. There's always a narrative that anytime anything bad happens to black people collectively, it's because we brought it on ourselves. They brought it on themselves. They brought it on themselves. But then, on the flip side, anytime black people do something great, then everybody wants to take credit for it. And that's what all said. Well, they need to acknowledge the people who helped to open the doors for them. Same thing all the time. But I think what's also important to recognize is that literally every single time black people collectively have made any gains in this country, there was always something systemic to make sure it was seam ripped. Whether it was policy, whether it was politicians, whether it was violence, whether it was death, whether it was burning down everything, whether it was voting, whether it was voter suppression. It was a bunch of different things. And so you see it every single time. Even literally when you just go back to the 40 acres and the mule that we were supposed to be given. Some people did get their 40 acres. And guess what happened? The 40 acres was taken back. Government was like, absolutely not. Reconstruction, it didn't get to last too long because folks got in office and Johnson was like, we ain't doing that. And so literally folks who were given land after slavery and that was supposed to be their opportunity to build themselves up, that land was snatched right back. Said, no, we changed our mind. Y'all not getting that. Absolutely not. So you have that happen. Then when you have just literally, there has been an attack on any kind of black progress every single time, even if it's something like affirmative action. You take a school like UCLA. You look at the diversity at the school. Literally, the only black students, aside from a handful, are all athletes. Because why? When you're talking about that university system, affirmative action was pulled out when it came to race, and admissions. That was yanked undone. And so you literally saw the demographics of that university shift over a span of years. And now all of a sudden, boom, there's that. There's no diversity. When you talk about gentrification, one of the ways to build wealth and everything is have property, have land, and it passes through generation. However, when you have wealthy people move into a neighborhood, buy up everything, property values go up, people can't afford the taxes, people get pushed out. Or sometimes it's not even wealthy people moving in and people get taxed out. Sometimes it's literally you just have developers come in there and push people out. They try to buy people out, they do whatever they got to do. You push people out of a neighborhood, there's no investment, there's no growth in that neighborhood. And then of course the people that are moving in that neighborhood do not align with what's already there, so their kids do not go to the schools in that neighborhood, and so the schools start to lose funding because their kids are going to the private schools or wherever else, and the schools become trash and everything else like that. And as the schools become trash, the schools start to lose funding, and as the schools get worse and everything else like that, the neighborhood continues to go down, the investment continues to drop in that neighborhood. There's not people moving in there to build up the neighborhood. If anything, they're moving in to change it and take it over. So you have that thing happening. And then even when you're talking police brutality, the judicial system, that whole thing is another conversation where literally you have policy just put out there to screw people over. You have ordinances, and this is really the most important part when you're talking housing and FHA loans. One, everybody knows the FHA loans, that was a way for a lot of people to come into wealth going into the 1950s and everything else like that when it came to building their own neighborhoods, building their wealth, and so on and so forth. Black people were not a part of that. You weren't getting a loan to buy no property. On top of the fact of there were ordinances that said you couldn't live in this neighborhood, you couldn't live in that neighborhood. And that's one of the reasons why literally every metropolitan city in the United States has a certain layout as to why certain people live in some pockets, some people live in others. Okay, hey, that's a conversation on redlining. And so you had whole ordinances where you couldn't live in certain parts of town, on top of the fact that you weren't getting any FHA loans. And even after we came out of the Great Depression and there was the New Deal, black people were not included in that. Black people were also not included in the idea of unions. As a matter of fact, a lot of unions were created to make sure that black people couldn't get them there. I was about to cuss. Get those jobs. And so even with the GI Bill, the military, black people were left out for years and years and years. I mean, they benefit from it now, but you have entire decades and generations of folks who got to benefit from all of these different programs that help to build what it is that they have. Even, even in death, black people can't have anything. Nothing more shocking than finding out that literally right in DC, the Rhode Island Metro Station used to be a black cemetery. But instead, the city was like, well, look, we got to build our metro station, so we're going to build right over grandma and them. So dig it up. They raising grandma from the dead, throwing her over to some pit somewhere. And then they didn't even do a good job of doing it. Literally, you have gravestones that started washing up across the Potomac and everywhere else. Like, absolutely crazy. So even in death, black people couldn't have anything. And we have the conversation of black farmers whose land was taken by the government. And I mean, this has been going on for 100 plus years. That's a really good conversation I think we should do a video on, when you're just talking about black farmers who have literally lost everything at the hands of the U.S. government. And really, this is not a conversation of woe is me, but it's a conversation of in spite of. In spite of all of those things, black people continue to do what it is they need to do in order to be great and make best with what's been given to them. The experience of being black in America is literally like being told to build a skyscraper with paper. Just some paper. You need to build a skyscraper. Here's some paper. Build it. Meanwhile, everybody else has been given all of the resources. You once had those same resources, but they were taken from you. Your labor was taken, everything. But here's some stacks of paper. Build a skyscraper. Now, the other folks, they got the good cement. They got the good metals, the good glass, the best nails, the best shovels, the best everything. Good foundation. They're building this good 8 floors into the ground with the foundation. They can just build. We got stacks of paper. And people are telling us we don't want it enough. If you want to build a skyscraper, you need to stack them papers up. Wind just blowing, the paper flying. Just chaos. Rain comes in, paper getting all soggy and messed up. And then the worst part, the people on the other team building a big giant skyscraper, they come and take your paper because they got to draw the notes. They got to do the blueprints. That's literally black in America. Literally. And so even when you just talk freeways, the freeway system, whose neighborhoods did the freeways drive and be built into? Whose neighborhoods were demolished so that you could have the freeway systems? It was the black neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Again, when you're talking about the schools and when you're talking to funding, and even with education, black people ain't even allowed to learn about themselves in school. Now you have this thing where the current administration is saying, y'all better not be teaching about that 1619 project or we're going to pull federal funding. And that includes HBCUs. So, these are the real conversations. And we just talked about Amy getting on the Supreme Court. All she had to do was hop, skip, jump, and she was up in there. And so she gets to make a bunch of laws that would definitely be detrimental to black folks. Can't wait to see a reparations conversation in front of a Supreme Court that's 6-3. You know what I mean? Conversations of healthcare. Like, it's crazy that people don't know any of that. But then they got all the mouth in the world to talk about what black folks need to do. And so even then when you just talk about the violence and the race riots, and literally, I won't even say race riots, more like race attacks, because black folks were always on the defense every single time. And we've talked about a handful of them. We could talk Tulsa. Speaking of Tulsa, LeBron James and I think CNN are teaming up to do a Tulsa documentary that's supposed to air in the spring of 2021. So we'll definitely check that out when it comes out. But again, when you just talk about all the race riots, or I just said I wouldn't say that, the racial attacks, whether it was New Orleans, whether it was St. Louis, whether it was Chicago, Detroit, DC, Atlanta, New York, like literally, even your Central freaking Park, an entire established black community bulldozed so that you can make a park for the city. Like, that's the experience of black in America. But in spite of all of that, black people continue to press and do what it is that they need to do. Voter suppression. I don't know what. We're literally counting jelly beans just in a new form. So that new form is standing in line for 12 hours to vote. That's literally the new, any kind of progress that's made continues to be seamed. And they keep playing in your faces every single time and then tell you it's your fault. And so that, for me, it's just like, I can't. So somebody like a Jared Kushner, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. You are a part of the problem anyway. And that's why I keep saying people need to recognize. I keep hearing these conversations about, a seat at the table, chestnut checkers. Now, some of y'all, listen, we don't got to be at every table because some of these tables have been created to make sure that we don't have anything. And those tables, they're plotting and trying to figure out how to get rid of us. You don't got to be at that table. Sometimes you need to be at a totally separate table that's plotting to get rid of that table. But everybody sometimes just wants proximity to whiteness, that they think just because you align with somebody who has some wealth and some money, you know what's best for the community. I'm not about to sit here and start name dropping tonight, but I need people to remember, do not be woke with no discernment. something don't sound right, if you're out here saying a bunch of viewpoints and it seems like the only people that are agreeing with you are white Americans, you might be doing something wrong. That's all I'm saying. And so, Jared Kushner, shut up. Just shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. But again, Jared Kushner, it's like, I just think people need to recognize these people are not, they're not in your corner. They don't know what's best for you, and they do not care. A lot of these are talking points and everything that they put out there to help push whatever agenda they have. And I think people are starting to misconstrue breadcrumbs with progress and success. Just because anybody's like, oh, well, we got a plan and this was going to give you a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's always breadcrumbs. And in all reality, in order to fix the problems that exist within the United States that disenfranchise black people collectively, where there's an entire system that works against them to the point where we have such a huge wealth gap, white people would have to lose something, and they're not giving that up. And so what they will always do, and this is a collective argument. This is not about individuals. So if that's not you, don't come on here. Not all white people. I'm talking about a system that you benefit from, so relax. But literally, folks would have to lose something in order to balance things out. Nobody's going to do that. So instead, they continue to throw out breadcrumbs and act like they're your savior. That's why the current president loves to run around and say, no one has done more for African Americans than me. And I'm like, well, what was actually done? If it was some breadcrumbs, okay. And then what I've also noticed is a lot of times some of these things that are paraded around as being, done for black folks, really it's some kind of program aimed at minorities, which includes everybody. But when you need it to count for black folks to get the argument about being good to black folks, then yeah, this was for black folks too. But really it's for black folks and it's for the Latino community, for the Asian community, for every community. But yeah, it's for them too. But yeah, this is for the black folks. Literally just breadcrumbs where they're not even giving you anything. There's no structural policy. There's no shift. There's no change. There's no anything. It's literally just, something to get you along the way. Like, they won't even write a stimulus check for the American people. So what you think you getting? You know what I mean? Just foolery. Kushner's such an idiot. Anyway, moving on. And then when we get to Walter Wallace, who was shot 10 times by police in Philadelphia the other day, on camera, I'll say this. The weirdest thing for me is that it seems like you're seeing an increase, not in the killings, but in the police not even caring that they're on camera while they do it. Like, there's no remorse, there's no, it is what it is. Kind of like when you're in school and maybe the teacher's up for recertification or something, and so that day they have, another person in the classroom with them who has a clipboard taking notes or something, and normally that teacher will try to put on the role of, they're a little bit more pleasant, they're smiling a lot more, they have... they got the jokes and everything else like that. They will at least play the role to make sure that they nail that assessment or whatever they're going through. With the policing that we've seen, it doesn't matter if they're on camera. It doesn't matter if there's an audience. It doesn't matter if there's 50 people out there watching. It does not matter. They're going to do whatever they want to do, and they recognize that they are currently protected by the current administration because the verbiage that's been put out there is that the police are going to always be right. Always be right. And so when you're looking at the details of everything that happens, okay, there's this 27-year-old man. He has some mental issues, and this is where you also see the double standard. How many times do we see some white kid go and shoot up the school, shoot up the movie theater, shoot up whatever they shoot up and shoot 50,000, 100 people, and then there's a whole conversation about mental health. We need to have the conversation about mental health and really understand what it is that people are going through and everything. And now you have a man who literally, apparently he wasn't on his meds at the moment. The mom was trying to help calm him down. Mind you, from what I read, I think they were saying his kids were right out there in front and everything. The mom was trying to calm him down. The police literally tell the mother to move, and then they shoot him 10 times. And the worst thing with the shooting is, like, it's never just like one shot to the leg and then they drop down and then, okay, let's see if he's calmed down. No, it's they get that power shot and everybody. It's like one shot goes off and then it's the trigger for everybody else. And you just hear, just like a scene out of Dead Presidents. And my question is, like, where's the taser guns? Clearly, if this man has a knife, he can't stab everybody. So I find it interesting that in those moments, because I can put a clip to the side of another white individual doing exactly the same thing but living to tell about it. And, but for some reason when it comes to black people, again, there's that expectation of perfection, even when it comes to just getting the sympathy and empathy of people who have witnessed whatever has happened. Because I'm watching people already dig into his character and try to find, who he cheated on after prom back when he was 17 and what his criminal record was. And, did he cheat in PE class? And, they're trying to find every reason to justify why he deserved to die. Because that's one of the burdens that exists with black Americans, unfortunately. In any situation where black people are unjustifiably killed by police or killed by police at all, then automatically the burden on black people is that you have to be perfect, because the minute they can find something wrong, that sympathy goes out the window. And that's what they did with Trayvon Martin. You know, there was a whole movement and people had I am Trayvon hoodies on and everything else. And as soon as they found out that there may have been a scuffle between George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, that went out the window, and it turned into, oh, he beat George Zimmerman so bad that George Zimmerman had to shoot him in order to survive. He was afraid for his life. You know what I mean? Same nonsense. And you're seeing it with Breonna Taylor. And the interesting situation with Breonna Taylor's bit is that you're now seeing the corruption. You're seeing the negligence on the behalf of the police. You're seeing the lies that were put out there. You're watching the grand jury. They just did an interview with Gayle King this morning saying, no, there was negligence. We weren't told this. We weren't told that. That wasn't presented to us. This doesn't add up. And so you're seeing that entire case just fall apart after they tried to paint together some raggedy, very Hollywood-esque story about Breonna Taylor's situation and all that and so on and so forth. But again, going back to Walter Wallace, it's that same thing where, again, there's no sympathy for black life in anything. And one of the other justifications people like to use to try to silence any kind of movement is, okay, then they bring up the protesting, and because people are going to kick over some trash cans, break a few windows, some people are going to go into the stores and start taking stuff. All of that is somehow equatable, that somehow that's Walter's fault. That's his fault. So, you know, now the sympathy for Walter goes out the window because somebody went into the store and looted. And I want to say, even in that conversation, there's almost this what do I want to say? There's almost like this aurora where they paint it as if only black people do the looting. I think y'all need to pay attention to what happens everywhere. You can go to Italy right now where they're protesting because, you know, they've been told that, okay, y'all gonna have to go back into another shutdown because these COVID numbers are crazy. And so Italians all in northern Italy, they were over there tearing up all them stores, right up in there in Gucci, going to Gucci, getting them Gucci bags. Okay, but of course, you know, that's a narrative that's only dropped onto black Americans. You know what I mean? If it's a hockey game and, you know, the hockey team, even if they win, white folks go and tear down the whole downtown. They burn it, jumping on top of cars, everything set on fire. You know what I mean? It's not an issue. But now you have a collective of people who are literally frustrated because they know that the system does not work for them. The system works against them. The system targets them. And no matter what they do, they can't win. In spite of trying to be great, in spite of trying to do the right thing all the time, the system does not work for them. And so you constantly see the protests and the uprisings because people are tired. And then you have an entire administration that doesn't even believe systemic racism is a thing. And so you have police who now feel empowered, who recognize that, hey, as long as what's happening is happening, we can do whatever we want. Nobody's really going to get us, you know. And that's why somebody like Kyle Rittenhouse can go over there and shoot up the people in Kenosha, you know, and literally get paraded as a hero, where people raise funds for him in his GoFundMe. And then, you know, I call it out and YouTube takes my video down because I'm inciting violence. And I'm like, I didn't say nothing violent. I just said, you know, look at the double standard. That's the America that we're living in. And so it's absolutely, it's crazy. And then people wonder why people have such a horrible viewpoint of police. And the police really have not even been trying to hide the racism anymore. They just, at this point, because half of them feel attacked, you know, you keep seeing the Blue Lives Matter, and I'm like, that's another conversation. Your career is not your life, all right? You can take off the badge, you can take off the uniform, and you get to go and live your life. Black people can't take off black skin, and black people can't take off America's racism. So save that crap. But of course, you know, they want to sit there and push that and do whatever, and it's just like you wonder why people have a horrible perception of the police. And I feel like the experience of literally every black man in America is every black man, and even women too, but everybody has that conversation of that bad run-in with the police. Literally every single person I know has had that experience. I had mine at 17, 18. Literally the first time and only time I've ever had a gun put in my face was by the police. And I ain't even do nothing. I was just in my basketball shorts and house shoes on the way to Taco Bell. Don't judge, that's what my brother wanted to eat. I was on the way to Taco Bell, and I've talked and told that story a million times, but there is a trauma that comes from an experience like that, where you literally, like, at least in my experience, I had anxiety for years anytime a police officer got behind me while I was driving. Like, I literally would get on the exit and get off of that road because I was paranoid. Like, that was the most traumatizing experience, especially because I wasn't doing nothing, and they were looking for somebody totally different. And my only saving grace, because they knew who they were looking for. They kept saying the person's name because this was in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And they kept saying some random person named Tony. And then I realized, okay, it's clearly they're looking for a Tony. I gave them 3 forms of ID. And they still were like, something's not right here. Because, you know, they had me all cuffed on the sidewalk. It's raining, it's cold. You know, I'm sitting, getting all wet and everything. I done gave them driver's license, military ID, Howard University ID, because I was a freshman at the time. And the only saving grace I had was my freaking hair. Because at the time, I used to wear braids and cornrows all the time. I had my hair tied back that day. And then the only saving grace was the police officer was on the radio. Oh, they said no ponytail. Oh, okay. And that's the only reason I was let go that day. And so everybody like has that experience. But going back to Walter Wallace, like the gruesomeness of it. There's a traumatizing experience to know that you can't even get on Twitter sometimes because you don't know what it is you're going to see. You know what I mean? You don't know what crazy thing is going to happen today as a black person. Black trauma is everywhere. You can't even escape it. That's the experience of black in America. But again, we just don't, we have to want it more. We have to want police brutality, and we just got to want it a little bit more. See what I'm talking about? Foolery. Also, Philadelphia, please don't forget, within your ballot, there are some questions that are pertaining to the police. Like, some of you have already voted and you're well in the know on this, but for those who didn't know, there are some questions that are on your ballot that pertain to a bunch of different things. One is stop and frisk, one is victim advocacy, one is bond, and one is the police commission. So really make sure that you are in the know with everything on that. And, of course, go ahead and vote and vote for what it is that you feel best fits your community. With this election, and this is not just for Philly, but like I've said before, this election is so much bigger than the president. Those local elections are really going to be what really determine what your experience is going to be for the next few years. So really, please do not just ignore the local elections. And, when it comes to, who's going to be your county supervisor or county sheriff, or who's on the school board, who's over your ward, who's city council, all of that. Pay attention to all those elections. If you're unsure, this is the perfect time to really make sure that you go in and read up before you vote if you haven't voted already. Also, to be honest, people are saying, like with the U.S. Postal Service, that if you didn't already have your ballot in the mail by October 27th, there's no 100% guarantee that your ballot will even make it in time to be counted. And based on what we've seen happen in places like Wisconsin, where now, unfortunately, if the ballots come in after Election Day, even if they're postmarked by November 3rd, they will not be counted. That's what the Supreme Court decided to rule on. It's probably best that you just go and drop your ballot off to one of the polling locations if you can. Just walk past the poll monitors out there with AR-15s and go ahead and put your thing in the box if you can. And so, yeah, there's that. Also, if anybody's interested, I'm going to be reading the book Not in My Neighborhood. It is by Intero Paitila. And this is pretty much about how LA was pretty much mapped out, and it's a conversation about like redlining and everything else like that. So if anybody is interested in reading this as well, I'm probably going to try to aim to be finished with this book by December. And so maybe like mid-December. I think this will be one of the Zoom meetings I was telling you guys about on the live. So if anybody's interested in reading this book, again, it's called Not in My Neighborhood. This is definitely what I'm going to start. So anybody that's interested, feel free to join me with this book. The last thing I want to close on, I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but it's still currently going on, and that's pretty much what's happening in Nigeria in relation to SARS, as far as the I guess you want to call them a police force that, they're supposed to specialize in, combating robberies and certain crimes and stuff that started happening, and they were established back in 92, but, they've pretty much turned out to be a very corrupt force, and what I'll say is this. The clips that I saw, and I've seen some very horrible ones coming, even like people being set on fire and stuff, like literally what you're seeing, it's not just Nigeria, but you're seeing it globally, where a lot of times countries become a police state, where the police and any kind of agency that aligns with the police, they're given so much power that there is no checks and balances. There's no oversight. There's no correction. People get to go and do whatever they want, and then what happens is when those issues are not corrected, when they first start popping up, it becomes systemic. It becomes endorsed. And literally that's how you get some of the atrocities that happen in the United States. Because some people were, saying some of the different things they were saying, and I'm like, if we want to be honest, a lot of the clips that I'm seeing coming out of Nigeria look just like the United States in the spring during all the protests that took place after George Floyd, where you literally see police, beating the mess out of people getting shot in the face with rubber bullets, and news anchors getting beat up. You literally see the same thing. People getting tear gassed. It's the same thing. It's global. And it's not just the United States. It's not just Nigeria, but you're seeing it happen in countries all over the world. And that's why it's important to make sure that you always pay attention to what's happening, because later down the line, when things aren't addressed, little tiny slip-ups keep just building up, and, people start getting more and more inches and more and more and more, and before you know it, you turn around and literally the people that you once looked to be the leadership are a part of the corruption. It sucks, and it doesn't help. You already know the United States plays a role into the corruption that happens into a lot of countries around the world, where we go and pretty much put in their leaders for them. All right, this is who you're getting, and this is who you're getting, and we're going to go to Argentina and kill your leader, and you get this one, and we're going to go to this country and kill that leader, and you'll get that one. And again, I know I have an international following, so for people who follow me that are from places like Nigeria that have better information about, where people can, I guess, donate or, do things, please put that information in the comments section. This is really not the lane I'm 100% in the know of, because I'm only getting the information that I'm seeing on Twitter, because really the U.S. media is not really talking about it. And so you're not getting the full insight. So, people on social media have done a really good job of putting out the information and putting out what's there, but there's nothing like getting it from the people who are actually living it. So for those who are in the area, feel free in the comment sections to add, any information in regards to what other people can do to kind of help that situation. Anyway, this has been a video where I'm kind of mad because I didn't get to talk about anything fun. Everything was so heavy, but it's life. That's where we're living at. So unfortunately, sometimes you got to have the heavier conversations. I do have some more videos for you this week. Like I said, I was going to try to double up on the content since I've been gone for a minute. I got to kind of rebuild and rebrand and restructure and relaunch, but we're here. Please stay safe. Please stay sane. Do what it is that makes you great. And anyway, we'll catch up. I'm out. Subscribe.
Take it for a trip, hey, you better not slip. If you do, better tighten up the grip. Life takes you down the road with no lines, watching you oncoming traffic, cause they'll hit you by surprise. Look up. Pay attention when your eyes can't see that the soul tries to win you, that the past repeats. When your soul tries to win you, that the past repeats. When your soul tries to win you, that the past repeats.
Wait, can we bring the
You
beat
make
back?
it fine, but maybe don't second guess yourself. Lessons come with moments from